So a while back I installed some TJ Brutal drag pipes, as well as one of those spiky air intakes from eBay/Amazon, on my 2008 Honda Shadow Aero 750. Needless to say, I've been having to dig in the carburetor a little bit, so I figured I'd show you how I did it. So here's how to change out the jets on a 2008 Honda Shadow Aero 750. Step 1. Remove your seat. Next, remove the two Allen bolts that secure the speedometer to the gas tank. Then, carefully lift the speedometer out of the way, and very carefully unplug the electrical connector from the rear. Using a 12mm socket, remove the bolt securing the rear of the gas tank to the frame. And be careful not to lose that little washer, you'll need it for reinstallation. On the left side of the petcock, there's this little tube, which I think it's an overflow. I can't remember exactly. It might be a vent tube. I don't remember. But that's the first thing we're going to want to remove. Secondly, making sure your fuel is in the off position. On the right side of the petcock, there's this little hose clamp. Now this secures our main fuel line to the petcock. So what you'll want to do is you'll want to grab a pair of needle nose pliers, remove that hose clamp by, pinching it and sliding it back, and then push off that fuel line. And now we can remove the tank. So if you support it from the front and the rear, lift it slightly and it should slide back towards the rear of the bike and it should come right off. Now we can move to the right side of the bike and remove the air intake. Now yours will probably look a little different than mine since I have this spiky setup, but essentially everything just unbolts. Just take things slow and one bolt at a time and you'll do fine. The intake boot is connected to the carburetor using a hose clamp. So grab a Phillips screwdriver, loosen that guy, and we can remove the intake from the motorcycle. I can't tell you what all these various vacuum lines and whatnot do, but you need to remove this small one on the right side. Just loosen that little clamp and it should pull right off. On the left side of the carburetor, you'll see a larger vacuum line, and the procedure's the same. Loosen the little hose clamp and it should pull right off. The carburetor is connected to the intake tube, or whatever the heck that part's called, with one of those hose clamp devices. So grab a Phillips screwdriver and loosen it up just like we did the last one. Now get a firm grip on the carburetor, wiggle it back and forth a little bit, and it should pop free. This is going to allow us access to the bowl on the bottom. Now we get into the fun stuff. The float bowl is held on by 4 Phillips head screws, and the first time I tried to remove them, they were on extremely tight. Tight to the point where I thought I was going to strip them out. So make sure you're using the appropriate size screwdriver and applying just a little bit of pressure. If you feel like you're going to strip these things, stop and reassess the situation, because that is the last thing you want to do. Seal may be a little tight the first time you remove this, but the bowl should separate from the main part of the carburetor. Now remember, there's going to be gas in here, so usually what I do is I leave the fuel in the off position and start the bike and let it run till it dies. As you can see, this makes it super easy to access the main jet and is easily removed with a flathead screwdriver. When you're installing the new jets, make sure you don't torque them down too much. You want them just snug enough. Behind the main jet, you should see another hole. That's where the pilot jet lives. Removal is the same procedure as the main jet, using a flathead screwdriver. Don't want to torque this one down too much either. Just snug it down until it stops. Alright, we're rejetted. Now we can put it all back together. Go ahead and bring the float bowl back into place and tighten her down with those 4 Phillips head screws. Grab the carburetor and reinstall on the intake tube. You should be able to tell when it's installed correctly because you should feel its seat. Tighten down the hose clamp to secure the carburetor. Starting with the smaller tube on the right, we can go ahead and reconnect the vacuum lines we removed earlier. Next step is to reinstall our air intake. And of course mine is going to be a little different from yours, unless you're running the same aftermarket spiky setup. Go ahead and reinstall the gas tank, and the installation is the reverse of removal. Carefully plug the electrical connector into the rear of the speedometer, and then bolt it down to the gas tank. Now all we gotta do is hook our lines back up to our petcock, and then we are done. And once the main fuel line is reinstalled, you're done. So that's how you replace the jets on a 2008 Honda Shadow Aero 750. This should work for all single carb Aeros, and possibly other single carb Honda Shadow models. I'm not sure if there are any, or what they are. Your results may vary, but I appreciate you watching. If there's anything specific you guys want to see related to the Aero, let me know, and yeah, I'll see you next time. Thanks, guys. See ya.